acknowledge that if you don't have a deeply emotional reaction when you read the Quran, that it's okay because you're still reading it. You're still connecting by believing in it. A woman told me that she removed her hijab, and so many people in the community were suddenly worried about her. They asked her if she was still Muslim. They invited her out to tea so that they could talk to her about the importance of hijab. They sent her many messages about why hijab is an obligation and how she is abandoning her religion when she abandons hijab. But this woman had also just recently come out of the hospital, and the reason is because she had attempted suicide. She had been hospitalized, and when she was hospitalized, she was told she was not allowed to wear hijab because hijab could be used as a tool. When she came out of the hospital, she realized that she wasn't in the space where she had the physical, emotional capacity to wear hijab and to protect her life at the same time. And she knew she needed to focus on simply staying alive. People from her community knew she was hospitalized, and they knew she was hospitalized for attempting suicide. And yet, the only time it seemed that the community wanted to reach out to her was not to ask her how they could help her protect her life, but how they could help her wear hijab again. Many times, people in our community are filled with love for Islam. They want to spread that love. They want to help everyone practice Islam in the absolute best way. But sometimes, because of perhaps not our awareness of the maqasid of the Sharia or the objectives of Islamic law, perhaps in our reading of the Quran, we are not able to understand that there are priorities in the Quran. How do we know what the objectives of Islamic law are? They come through study, but someone who reads the Quran, who understands the Quran, is going to know that protecting someone's life is the first obligation in such a circumstance. When you read the Quran, you know that it is a love letter from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as our scholars of the past have called it. Malik bin Dinar is a scholar of our past, but he also had a history, like so many of our scholars and so many of us do. Malik bin Dinar did not used to be someone who was righteous. He would often drink, and one day he had a daughter. He loved his daughter, and as she grew older and would sit on his lap, sometimes when he would drink alcohol, she would bat it away from his hand, push it away, until the point came that he had actually really stopped drinking. And then one day, when she was around 3 or 4 years old, she suddenly passed away. And Malik bin Dinar, instead of praying or making wudu or reading Quran or going to the masjid to navigate his grief, he drank. He drank and drank and drank until he knocked out unconscious. And when he knocked out unconscious, he had a dream. He was on the Day of Judgment. And there was a snake, this massive snake, that began to follow him, began to chase him and wanted to eat him. He ran trying to get away from the snake, and he came across an elderly man. And he said, "Help, help, can't you see the snake?" And this elderly man said, "Look at me, I'm frail, I'm weak, I can't help you. Go that direction." So Malik bin Dinar ran, and he got to a cliff, and beyond the cliff was hellfire. And a voice calls out, "You are not from amongst them." So he turns around, he starts running again, he sees the elderly man again. "Please help me, can't you see the snake is going to eat me?" The elderly man says, "Look at me, I can't help you. Look at that snake, there's nothing I can do, go the other direction." So Malik bin Dinar keeps running. And who do you think he suddenly sees? He sees his daughter. And suddenly, the snake disappears. He sits with his daughter. He puts her on his lap. And he says, "Oh, my daughter, tell me about that snake." And his daughter says, "Don't you know that on the Day of Judgment, your bad deeds are going to come in the form of something like this? And that old, frail man, he was your good deeds. You had done so many bad deeds to make them so weak that they couldn't even help you. And had you not lost me, the trial, the test, the pain of the loss of his child, he would have been destined for hell." And then she said to her father, "Oh, my beloved father, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ Has the time not yet come for the believers' hearts to be humbled by the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?" He woke up screaming, "It's time, it's time!" He quickly made wudu, went to the masjid. As he entered the masjid, he heard that the imam had already finished Surah Al-Fatiha. As he's walking in, he heard, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ The very same verse that his daughter had told him in the dream. That was the moment of Malik ibn Dinar's transformation from someone who was far from Allah to someone who became a scholar. It was through the Quran, in navigating his grief and finding his grounding, that Malik ibn Dinar became who he became. And it is through the Quran that you and I can inshallah find that grounding and healing too. Oftentimes we feel far from the Quran because we don't feel an emotional connection to it. But the Quran is how Allah communicates His love to us. No. But the Quran is a love letter from Allah to us. And while, of course, we should try to feel emotionally connected with the Quran, also, we have stories of the companions who, of course, had moments where they wept. Of course, they had moments where they sobbed when they were listening to the Quran. But they also had moments when they didn't. That verse I just mentioned, is it not time for the believers? Who are the believers? They are the companions themselves in this context. Acknowledge that if you don't have a deeply emotional reaction when you read the Quran, that it's okay because you're still reading it. You're still connecting by believing in it. Read it in a language that you understand. If you don't understand the Arabic, many times in Ramadan in particular, we're told read it as quickly as you can, as many times as you can. Are you leaving the month transformed? Do you know what the verses are asking of you? Do you know about the love letters from your Lord? Read in a language too. You get the reward of the Arabic, of course, but also read in a language you understand. The Quran was revealed in Arabic to Arabs, not Japanese to Arabs, not Persian to Arabs, not in Spanish to Arabs, Arabic to Arabs, so that they would understand and transform. And when you read the Quran, know that when you read it with contemplation, it's a way of deeply connecting to it like a relationship. For example, Asma, the daughter of Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with both of them, would recite over and over again, فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَوَقَانَا عَذَابَ السَّمُومِ. She recited that ayah the entire night. I want you to imagine reciting that verse. The first time reciting it in Jannah, grateful that you're in paradise. The next time, finding a group of your friends who you haven't seen in only Allah knows how long since you've all been parted from life. And you see each other, and you go to each other, فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَوَقَانَا عَذَابَ السَّمُومِ. And then maybe you see a loved one. Maybe you suddenly see a loved one, the person that you miss most in this life right now, and you see them understanding in Jannah, and you go to them, and you say to each other, فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَوَقَانَا عَذَابَ السَّمُومِ. How would your voice, how would your heart, how would your recitation change every single time when you think about the different ways that that verse applies to your life? Building a relationship with the Quran is one that looks like a relationship. It's not a book that you put aside and you read once in a while, but a best friend. And with a best friend, the way you cultivate that relationship is by speaking with them, is by listening to them, is by understanding what they're saying, is by spending quality time with them, and is by making sure that your relationship with them and their relationship with you is one that helps you become the best version of yourself. Islam did not come to change your personality. It came to transform who you are. It came to help you find light and grounding and healing in every part of your existence, and most importantly, have a hereafter lens. As Sheikh Ahmed Deeb says, Islam came to mute your ego, not your personality.